Hey, it's Tpok, and we left off with Tomohiro being a jerk. So, yeah. Tpok cried out, her eyes drowning with tears, begging for something, anything, from me. I just don't know. I don't get anything anymore. I just stood there and waited. So she continued, I don't even know if I want to be held and told it'll be all okay. If you're just yanking my chain, if this is all some bad joke, or if I want to say that such comfort's just a dinky bandage over a gaping wound, and useless, just which one is it? She just kept crying senselessly. No, she screamed. No, 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 no. None of that's right. I just... She made a violent motion, sweeping everything off the table with her right hand. There was a great thick crash. Porcelain plates and cups went flying everywhere. Things broke on the floor, shards of glass tinkled where they lay. The meat sauce soaked up the dust on the floor, gaining an instant grainy texture, like that of some grotesquely vivisected snowman. Snowman, why'd I say it like that? A dark red mass of entrails. I just wanna be with you, she screamed. I just wanna believe in you. I just wanna be yours. I wanna be in love with you, and I want you to be in love with me. That's all I want. I had no words. In the silence, I heard my heart pounding. Or was that hers? I had no words. My heart was beating too loud for me to hear my own thoughts anyway. Believe, I whispered. It was all I could do to just parrot that word. Yeah, believe, she entreated me. I want to believe that you love me. I don't want anything else in the whole wide world. So why can't you just give me that one little thing? I'm not asking for a fortune here. I parroted her again. A fortune, you say? Dear God. Yes. Always... Wait, who is this? Always holding this trump card called "But I'm an Orphan" behind her little back. Wasn't that what Matsuri had said? I don't want anything else in the whole wide world. So why can't you give me that one little thing? I'm not asking for a fortune here. Was this what Matsuri meant? Because right now I couldn't help but feel that Tuka was trying to say this to me. This just isn't fair. I'm just a poor little orphan girl in the big cold world. Defenseless, penniless, not a thing to my name, never getting what I want or need. So why can't I at least be with the one I love? This just isn't fair. And I began to hate her. Okay, now I'm kinda seeing where he's going with this. So now it's somewhat understandable, but still pretty rude. So when she just about screamed, I wanna believe in you, make me believe, she'd gotten right up in my face, her big eyes looking up at mine, begging and pleading for me to do something, anything to make the pain stop. Her hair was like a curtain, behind which there was nothing but tears. Let me tell you something. It's enough to create all sorts of inferiority complexes. This dirty business of living while you're chained to that term, orphan. And in that, Tuka and I were one and the same. What right had I, then, to condemn her for putting into words the very same inadequacy that I also felt? So I whispered, Tpok. Because this wasn't just about Tpok and me anymore. Everyone, no matter how strong, no matter how secure, has a belief, a catchphrase if you will, that he will use it as a scapegoat in order to hide the filth of his lies and self-deceptions from himself. And when the catchphrase breaks, when it fails to catch you, that's when you lose it. That's when you go totally insane. That's when you throw yourself off a building, or you lock the doors and open fire on a bunch of defenseless children before turning the gun on yourself. The only thing in this whole wide world that accounts for any difference in personality is just how much reserve you have before you're forced to pull that catchphrase out and use it. Because every single time you do use it, it starts to crack and crumble until there's nothing left. And Tpok. Maybe Tpok was born with almost no reserve at all. Tpok is so weak, is she not? Matsuri again. Her under spiteful words. Shut up, I muttered. My sweat ran cold. My hair stood on end. There was an enormous pressure building inside me somewhere. Always needing to be swept up by something. Always needing some circumstance to blame. I felt a wave of nausea, like someone had crammed my mouth full of dead ash. I'm relieved. What the hell are you relieved about? Because you're no better than us, Matsuri. So shut up. Shut up, I yelled. I felt something coming loose inside of me. It was a clean cut. And now I didn't know anything, and now I didn't know anything anymore. Whoa, new music. Tpok cried out softly, as I roughly crushed her to me, ensnaring her lips in a brutal, possessive kiss. She stiffened, tried to say something for a moment, but then she stopped resisting altogether and closed her eyes. Her lips were defenseless. They yielded to the sudden assault without a fight, and then her entire body went limp in my arms. The first thing that I felt was the warmth of her body, slightly colder than mine, and then the taste of her mouth, the oily taste of instant meat sauce, the starchy feel of a tiny fragment of pasta, and through all of that, her. She gulped. Tomohiro, and went gasping for breath when I finally released her lips. But I wasn't stopping now. I couldn't stop myself if I tried. I brought her face right up next to mine again. She tilted her head up at me and waited. So I thrust my tongue inside her mouth, which opened up to welcome me, first tentatively, then with more and more force. I wanted to have her, all of her, so every taste bud in my tongue drank her scent now, and I was intoxicated. She just held on for dear life, letting out a little moan every once and again, completely pliant. Her mouth was moist. I could feel her tongue clinging to mine, letting me do whatever I wanted to her. And when I let her mouth go again, she was panting heavily. Her breath was hot against my cheek. And so I locked lips with hers again, plunging my tongue deep into her mouth. This time around I needed to make sure. I thrust my tongue as far as it would go, almost into her throat it seemed. Yes, I needed to make sure. This was Tpok. And she just clung to me, her tongue meeting mine, yielding, begging for more. I closed my eyes. I could still see everything. The sounds of flesh against flesh, tongue against tongue, were as plain as day and as rough as a sudden revelation. The world shrank down until it contained just Tpok and me. I couldn't hear anything else anymore. Good. Good. Because now that rebuking voice was gone from my head. Every so often Tpok moaned softly and incoherently. She just looked up at me, otherwise unmoving, not defending herself, not resisting. I saw it in her eyes. No matter how violent the emotion that had ruled her not a few minutes ago, it was gone now, blown away. I saw it in her eyes. She wanted it. She needed to be taken. So that was all. That was all, and there was no other way around it. No other way at all. Then what was it that impelled me? Rage? Lust? Despair? I just didn't know anymore. And no answer would appear even if I were inclined to think about it. And I wasn't inclined to think about it anyhow. I finally let her mouth go again. Her lips parted. Strings of saliva like wispy spiderwebs formed between us and then were gone. And when I saw how flushed and eager her face was, I felt a fire rise deep down inside of me. Tomohiro, Tpok panted. Tomohiro, I love you. I murmured back. But she ignored that and continued, Please, here I am. Make me believe. There was nothing but supplication in her eyes now. No anger, no despair, no happiness, just submission. And then she leaned into me like a starved kitten begging for a master for a scrap of food. Miserably, as if I could break her in two, putting herself at my mercy. Make her believe, as if I was going to do that. No more dreams. No more dreams. So I said roughly, You really think that's going to happen? The obvious hope on her face crumbled and faded into ash in an instant. She looked crushed. But other than that expression on her face, and the lack of resistance in her body had not changed one bit. I pushed her down to the ground. She lay face up, staring at me. Oh. Wow, I'm gonna need to censor that. She gave a soft cry when my hands went to her breasts. Her arms startled, as if they were about to cross themselves over her chest to defend herself, but they lay unmoving. I grabbed the bottom of her blouse, yanked it up. No bra underneath. Her white breast peeked out from under the fabric and then into plain view. Her nipples arose, pink and erect, just asking to be ravaged, not caring that their owner was being held down and stripped. With my left hand, I began undoing the clasp on her skirt. My fingers touched soft fabric and even softer flesh. I bent over and greedily sucked on her right teat. She moaned in response. And when I roughly laved her nipple with my tongue, she moaned even louder still. Now, I had my right hand on her left breast, at her nipple between my index finger and thumb. She wriggled and writhed like I was torturing her. All the while, I continued to suck on her right breast. I felt, rather than saw, her eyes close as she gave herself over to me. So I bit down hard, almost hard enough to draw blood. She screamed in response. And not a scream of pain or fear either. This was something different. A lust, desire, slutty eagerness, pathetic submission. I saw all those writ large on her face. I yanked off her skirt in one contemptuous motion. Faint red tracks appeared on her hips from that force. Her smooth thighs were open to me now, as well as her panties. I reached out and grabbed them, made ready to rip them off as well. But then Tpok, like an obedient little child, lifted her hips for me. Her panties came off with no resistance whatsoever. They were wet with Tpok. Her legs were wide open to me. There was her thicket of pubic hair, and underneath that, the slit of her entrance. And judging from the juices that were softly trickling down onto the dusty floor by now, it was as if I had dynamited the dam when I removed her panties. I jabbed into her opening, roughly, with an index finger. She jumped a bit and let out a soft moan, again of abject, servile pleasure. I pulled my finger out and showed it to her. It was glistening with her juices. She stared unfocusedly at it, as if everything were happening in a dream, and she let out another soft cry. I made an O with my index finger and thumb. There was a wet squishing sound. And when I flattened my palm and undid the O, sticky threads developed and disappeared a moment later. Look, Tpok, look. You dirty slut. You're plenty wet. You want it pretty bad. I'm going to use you any way I want. I'm going to give it to you hard, tear you in half, you whore. And you're okay with that. No, she murmured, looking at me helplessly, but I wasn't about to let her get away with anything. So I went on. A good girl would resist, you know? Or are you really this low? You're being raped, just in case you haven't noticed. And you just lie there. Yes, please. Yes, more. What kind of sick deviant are you? But, she protested. I could just cut her off. Look, there's nothing between us. You're just prostituting yourself out. You dirty whore. Come on, resist. I'll allow that. Try to get away from the bad man who's going to hurt you. Haha. Look at you. A whore being raped. That's right. Isn't this lovely? She whimpered softly in response, then fell silent. I had no idea what to do with that. There was such anguish, such despair on her face. Why didn't she move? Why did she just lie there and surrender? Why did she just stare up at me, submitting to everything I did to her? Come on. Resist, I finally said. Funny how now I sounded like I was pleading. She didn't do a thing. So this time I bellowed, "Don't make me repeat myself." This got a rise out of her. "No," she whimpered. "No, please stop. Somebody help." But her voice was soft and her eyes were wide open. Her legs were open, if anything, wider than her eyes. Her arms remained motionless. This wasn't resistance. This got a rise out of me. Why, you? I hissed with rage. I undid my zipper, pulled off my pants. I felt harder than I'd ever felt before, ready to impale her until she begged for mercy. And I saw her eyes focus on, beg for, my erection. I took off my underwear and held Tpok down and got on top of her. I felt her hips wriggling a bit, but this wasn't the resistance I wanted. She was adjusting herself, positioning herself so the tip of my engorged penis now brushing up against her pussy lips. Oh, really? Okay. My hips lunged forward. She screamed as my manhood just about tore into her. No resistance at all. Her arms stayed still, her legs stayed wide open. And from within her, a warm, wet, clutching welcome, even as I forced myself all the way in. It was like she was just drinking me in without any friction or resistance at all. She felt so buttery warm inside, and so good it felt wrong. What was it about today? What was it about today? It wasn't as if I didn't fuck her like this just about every other day, anyhow. So why did it feel so different this time? I didn't know. I did the only thing a man does in this situation. I gave it to her hard. And with every thrust, every single time I went in, she let out a cry. And with every thrust, every single time I pulled myself almost all the way out, she let out another cry. She timed herself with me, giving way whenever I lunged forward, synchronizing with me when I pulled back. Her face twisting with an expression somewhere between intense pain and intenser pleasure. And so I hammered into her with everything I had, determined to break her into two if I could. I felt her tunnel clenching and milking it as it accommodated me. I slid almost all the way, paused, plowed all the way in. Every single time I thrust like this, her entire body trembled, and her breasts jiggled a bit. Loud, obscene slapping sounds accompanied every downward stroke, as did her moans. Whether they were of pleasure or pain, I didn't know, and I didn't care. I could feel her juices lubricating my shaft, dripping down my balls. With every thrust, more seemed to come out, and with every thrust I could smell that scent, her scent. Beads of sweat formed on my forehead and dropped down onto her breasts. I kept giving it to her as hard as I could. The walls of her vagina seemed to collapse around my cock, squeezing and milking me, begging me to stay and hurt her some more. So I did. I could feel the explosion building. I was going to come soon. But I couldn't stop myself. So I just went on sawing into her. And just when she went on clutching me, crying out with every stroke. But by this time I knew that those were screams of unstoppable pleasure that drove me even closer to the edge. She was getting pretty close herself, judging from how her wild gasps were speeding up. I could feel my chest muscles tighten, and I could feel my balls tensing up, ready to loose their load. And the faster I pistoned, the louder her cries got. I was at the limit now. I managed between gasps. I'm gonna come wherever I want. I'm going to fill you up, you cunt. She just screamed in reply. I said nothing. And then, Tomohiro, I love you. Damn. I couldn't believe this. How long was she going to hang on to that? God damn it. I lunged forward one last time, burying myself as far as I'd go, and then pulled out all the way. At least that's what I was going to do, but instead, I let out an animal moan and filled her up with my seed, just as I'd boasted I'd do a few seconds ago. Why? I gasped. You fucking idiot. Because the moment I'd gone to pull myself out all the way so I could come on her belly, her arms came up and locked themselves around my waist. Her legs came up and hooked themselves around my butt, and I was forced to come inside her. And the moment she felt me spurting, her tunnel went wild, clutching and begging and milking every last drop out of me. And every last drop went into her. I could feel her pussy greedily drinking every last drop. And by the time it finally finished clutching, I was already starting to get soft. Tomohiro, she whispered with her eyes closed. Yet she kept holding on tight. It was only after I was sure she was sure I had no more seed to pour into her, no more to give her, that she finally let her arms and legs fall apart. Tuka, I managed. I pulled out, with an obscene noise. cloudy, milky white fluid started spilling out and dripping down her pussy lips. That was messed up. That was really messed up. I really wish I did not read that. Well, guys, thanks for watching, I guess. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that this happened. Did not expect that to happen. Okay. Anyways, guys, I'll see you next time.